I'm going to call the September 24th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Finance to order at 7:05. We're waiting for everybody to connect. If you would just join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you would take just a moment out of your day in silence, in remembrance and acknowledgement of the great loss of two amazing women this past week, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Mary Ellen Bolton, principal of Jane Ryan Elementary School, both of whom fought courageous battles against cancer. One of my favorite RBG quotes is, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made." And here in Trumbull, I think we're doing pretty good with that. My condolences to Mrs. Bolton's family and the entire Jane Ryan community. Her leadership was seconded only by her genuine kindness and warmth, and I know she will be long remembered and longer missed. Thank you. Tonight, on the call on Zoom, you will see myself, I'm Lainey McHugh, Chairman, my Vice Chair, Paul Timpanelli, Board of Finance members, Marty Isaac, Michael Barker, Elaine Hammers, and alternates Christine L. Iris, Mark Mascola, and Vindy Gennaro. Mark Mascola will be voting tonight for Steve Choi, who is not here. I want to extend my congratulations to Steve and his wife Cindy on welcoming their new twins. And he will have all sorts of details and pictures hopefully soon, or we will nag him until the next meeting. Also on the call tonight, Cindy Katsky, First Selectman Vicky Tesoro, our internal auditor Therese Keegan, our finance director Maria Pires, our clerk Phyllis Collier, and there will be representatives from the Board of Education facilities, Dave Irwin and Scott Kerr, Board of Finance member. Before we begin with our agenda this evening, I'll look to see if there's anybody who wishes to make public comment. I don't see anybody with hands raised at this time. Phil, do you see anybody for public comment that I'm missing? Okay, so moving on, we'll start this evening with our auditor's report. Therese Keegan, you're gonna go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight's report is entitled Trumbull Board of Ed Energy Program Review. The report examines utility costs and progress toward energy efficiency of most Board of Education locations, and it provides a comprehensive summary of work and cost of each project completed by location during the 5.5 years ended 12/31/19. It provides detail of incentive and financing programs utilized and scheduled repayment obligations. It provides detail and summary information related to historic consumption and cost of all utilities by year, by location. And hopefully the report provides information which may be valuable to future efficiency project decision-making. Tonight's report will be presented in 4 sections: the overview, project financing, project results, findings, and recommendations. Starting with the overview. Upon his hiring on 7/1/14, Mr. Deming evaluated buildings and equipment at each Board of Ed location and noted 9 school boilers were, on average, 56 years old, while recommended life is 30 years. School lighting was inefficient and less effective than possible. Board of Ed was not optimizing advantages of third-party electrical and natural gas suppliers and was therefore purchasing at higher than available rates. Trumbull's utility cost exceeded that of comparable buildings at other schools. The energy savings recommendations were identified and prioritized. Moving on to financing.
Therese,
Oh, pardon me.
can I hold you just for 1 second? Elaine wanted to see if we could get the report up on the screen. Elaine, are you able to share from your computer?
I think so. I can try.
All right, if you're not able to, let's make sure.
I have the report up, so hopefully I can.
All
Let me
right,
see
let's
what
go.
happens.
Okay, there we go.
Well, I lost my screen, but it came up to you. Let me see what did I do? Okay, well, I can hear
You
you.
go to Zoom completely.
Yes.
Can you see it now?
Let me see what I did wrong. I shared my screen and now I just see the word Zoom.
Click on Zoom and it should come up on a box on the right. And then you can hit full screen.
Not syncing. Okay, hang on. Okay, I'm showing her and I'm not seeing it. So if you just let me know when you want me to change it, I can see it. So tell me when you want me to change. I'm on the overview page. Okay, if you go down, Elaine, to the next page, right there. That's perfect. Okay. Yep. Okay, this is the financing section. Each project was accomplished utilizing one or more of the following opportunities. 3 of the United Illuminating Energy Efficiency Fund programs, which included energy opportunities, retro commissioning, and upstream programs. BOE also utilized Bank of America lease purchase opportunities. And lastly, the town bonded $88,000 over 20 years. All projects were completed with no out-of-pocket cost. A summary of project funding is on page 4 of your report. And to summarize that, Bank of America provided $6.8 million in lease purchasing. The retro commissioning was $207,000, net of $115,000 in incentives. The bonding was $88,000, and the incentives were just under $1.3 million. A list of project cost, incentive opportunities, and associated financing is available to you in the appendix, page 9. Repayment is detailed on the last page of the report. Okay, you can just stay right there, Elaine. Thank you. Okay. This is the project results. A cost summary by utility by year is presented on page 5. As shown by the green highlighting, total utility cost had been decreasing each year between 2014 and 2018. However, cost rose in every category during 2019. So these costs were broken down by utility, by month, by location, and by unit of measure. The results of this analysis are available in the appendix on page 12. It becomes apparent that although overall cost went up by $223,000 in 2019, usage also increased. Since electricity represented 87% of the increase in cost, we went one step deeper to analyze those charges.
Excuse me for just a moment, Lainey, can I, this is Marty Isaac, I didn't know how to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Teresa, I want to make sure I understand. The project cost was 8.3 million. We had 1.2 million incentives, so that was $7 million of funding that Trumbull had to come up with. Of the $7 million, when I look at the summary of expenses by year, where do I see the financing costs, or is this just the power cost? Where do I see the financing costs built into this?
Hang on, Marty, I'll tell you which page. If you go to page 9, that's where I put the whole thing together. And I had to work through the ledger and tie that into books. So really, I couldn't just take the ledger or the books. Everything was tied down. And this shows.
I'm just trying to understand it a little, and maybe you're answering. Let me just get the thought out and then help me see it. So before we bought the new equipment, the last year was at 2013 then, before we had it?
Yes, Mark started in 2014.
Okay, so in 2014, all the payments for our energy was 2.9 million, right? And then as
Correct.
we're going forward, you have a lower energy cost, but what I'm trying to see is comparing what the energy cost was before we upgraded to the energy cost with all costs of financing in there to understand how we did just on a comparison basis. So before we upgraded, you know, in 2013, 2014, I'm paying 2.3 million, 2.9 million.
Yep.
we start getting some of the new equipment coming, but the financing cost isn't included. So it's not quite an apples to apples comparison. So I'm trying to understand if I wanted to put it all together and understand, how do I look at that?
Well, Marty, the schedule that you see here on the screen on page 5 does not have financing included. This is purely utility cost. And then on the last page of the report, it shows the repayment schedule. And the repayments started in 2016.
Okay.
Because once the money was drawn, once the invoices were paid, then those invoices were submitted to Bank of America. And then Bank of America paid us back.
And
So it took some time to get that done.
how should I think about the annual cost? If I'm trying to layer this in, there was somewhere in the report that said it had a 10-year payback.
Yes,
I took that to mean that our energy savings was going to pay for the $7 million of outlay. Is that communicated somewhere that I actually can see that we got $7 million of energy savings that could pay for the cost of this?
you won't see $7 million paying for the cost of this in this time period, because the $7 million would not pay back for 10 years.
So am I seeing 700,000 of cost savings per year? Because on the energy piece, I'm not sure I'm seeing that. I had 2.3 million in 2013. And then, as you're saying, in 2019, I'm at 1.8. Maybe that's an outlier. 2017 was 1.7. So it looks like there's $3 to $4, maybe $400,000 of energy savings.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm just trying
if
to
you
map it
compare
out.
2014 to 2018, there's $1.5 million, but it's not consistent, Marty, nor is the completion of this work done all in 1 year. So you keep having these dribbles year over year over year. So you're paying back a loan, you're still taking out a loan, you're still, this whole thing is ongoing for this period of time that you're seeing here. That's why I broke out the utilities separately, because it's almost unfair to say, when you are expensing over this time period and haven't given it the time to run through the payback period, if I were to mix that, it would be higher than what you were paying, because you haven't realized all of the savings yet.
But so shouldn't I see $700,000 of savings a year if it's over 10 years, or maybe it's not linear? Shouldn't I, as more came online, shouldn't my savings have accelerated? So I started at 300,000 or 300,000 year 1 and 2. Like, shouldn't 2019 be maybe $1 million in savings when I compare earlier? Or I'm just confused why we're not seeing the savings.
Well, in 2019, as we go through the report, the consumption was up significantly, which I mean, there's nothing that any kind of equipment can do for you. I mean, it wasn't up as much as it would have been if we didn't have new equipment, perhaps. But the point is that if you just start to use it a whole lot more, your cost is possibly going to go up. So that does come up in the report later on.
I'll let you continue then. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't reading it incorrectly. Financing wasn't in there. I'll let you continue. I thank you for clarifying.
Financing is not in there.
Okay.
Financing is, the repayment schedule is on the last page.
Okay.
Okay.
Hold on, Mark, you had a question also?
Yeah. Hey, Therese, how are you?
Okay. Good. How are you?
I think just following up on Marty's comment, I think what would be helpful in some of these analyses as we go forward is understanding what the IRR, what the payback would be on the investment, which I think would answer Marty's question. So you've got cash outlay that happens over a period of years. You've got savings which are going to materialize year over year. You need to hold something constant in that equation, and that maybe is the price per kilowatt or whatever the unit of measure is.
Yeah, but even that is not constant, Mark. So here's where I had
my point, Teresa, is you gotta, what I'm saying, Teresa, is to be able to determine whether or not you obtain the savings, that you anticipated. The model that needs to be performed needs to outlay the cash flows both negative and positive over the payback period.
Yeah.
So that you can then determine if the return on the investment that you're making is actually positive or negative. And I just don't, it's not here, and I'm assuming it was difficult to pull together. It's a very good report. I'm sure the records were hard to come by. It's not an easy analysis, but I think as we move forward with projects such as this, you know, which are good projects, you know, being able to articulate and track and you know, the savings plus the investment over time is going to be important.
Yeah.
So that's my only comment.
Well, I could do it going forward, but I could put something together for you on this as well. Although from what I was told, that just because you're paid for the boiler or the solar panel or whatever it is, you don't see the savings like day one. You know, some time has to.
No, agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
No doubt. But my point is that you should be able to, you know, at least model that out and then see
Yeah.
how you're doing. And so at inception, there should have been a model that said, I'm going to make this $8 or $9 million investment. Here's the savings I'm going to get per year, right? Year 1 through year 10. And then we could sit here today and be able to say, how did we do year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and are we achieving the savings that we anticipated? And that's the hard part, I think, that Marty was trying to get at, but
Yeah.
is not really coming through.
Yeah,
in the
I
report.
understand what you're saying, Mark. And I thought I was on to that with this little chart here on the page that we have, where each year it was improving as far as cost, but then when I hit 2019, the whole thing.
Yeah, the hard part, Teresa, is let's say for instance, you know, in year 16 or 2016, it looks like there's savings, but you know, to the point before, consumption is way down, or the price per kilowatt is down. There's energy prices at that, you know, it's hard to tell. So you've got to, you know, it could be one or the other. It may not be because of the new investment. It could be for some other factor. Similar to your argument in 19, where consumption went up and that's why we didn't save year over year.
Well, what you're seeing on the screen is just a summary of what's on page 12, where I did go deeper, because I wanted to know what happened in 2019. So really what was driving that increase for the most part was electricity. So I broke out the electric costs on the next page and on page 6, and just put in the electric and the solar, which was in place at that point in time, for the schools that had it, which were 4 of them: Hillcrest and Madison, Frenchtown, and Trumbull High School. So if we look there, we can see that Hillcrest and Madison increased consumption by 91,689 kilowatts at an increase in cost of less than $2,000. But if you look at Hillcrest and Madison, they were using a higher level of solar than were Frenchtown and Trumbull High School. So when the high school had more consumption, it cost them more. So we were getting the generation from the solar panels at 5 cents, and it didn't have any transmission fees or anything else with that. So blended, it wasn't as high as it would have been if that increase in consumption was not as high as it would have been if we did not have the solar panels. But the solar panels don't operate at 100%. I mean, just because you put in a solar panel doesn't mean you're not going to pay any electric bills anymore. It's based on the conditions of the day, how much sun there is, you know, so you're never going to really get them to 100%. You're still going to have the electric cost.
Therese, 2 things. I see Elaine's hand, and also there's a huge variance from 2013 to 14 on the natural gas, and then it drops significantly in 2015. Do you know why? What happened there? Is that when the new boilers come online? Do you have?
I actually think that there was a price change in the natural gas during that period of time.
Okay.
The boilers were put in between 16 and 18. So, I mean, that's quite a stretch of time, but there were 9 boilers put in.
No, I see
So-
that, but the variance from 14 to 15 is huge, and then they're much smaller increments, 15, 16, 17, so I was
Yeah.
curious what that was. Also, Elaine, you have a question?
Yeah, Therese, you referred to an increase in consumption.
Yes.
Do we know what that is or what caused it? Was it temperature changes that would use the
I
natural
really-
gas or?
Don't think it was so much temperature changes, but that's in a finding, Elaine, which we're gonna go to right now.
Okay,
But I do also want to tell you that when I started this, the first day that I went to the school to meet with Mark, he said to me, do you know that, like, I'm not going to be here? So I had to really get everything that I could from him in a 2-week period. And after that 2-week period, not only did I not have him, I didn't have anybody. I didn't have Sean. I didn't have anybody else to ask these questions to. So Peg was a huge help to me. And her and I went through and dug out filing cabinets and got what we could. But basically, this whole report wasn't really an audit. It was a reconstruction of activity that happened during a period of time, because there was no worksheet to look at and say, oh, is this number correct? There was no worksheet. There was no number. So, and there was nobody to say what happened here. What happened in this school during this period of time. So the numbers are, and I'm not shirking responsibility or anything, but the numbers are what I was able to gather. And if I couldn't get it there, we went directly to Bank of America, we went to United Illuminating, and we asked for the information because we couldn't find it. So I think, Elaine, the section that you're talking about there was an increase, and I do have, some emails that went back and forth, and really they were about cooling the schools, every school in the summer months, which was not probably in the budget to the extent that they had to be cooled, and it was because of IT equipment. And the emails were from the superintendent and Mark Deming, and Mark was kind of upset because he hadn't planned on this money being spent. And they had asked him to estimate what it was costing. And he said he thought it was probably $6,000 a room. And there were 5 rooms that in 5 schools that were being cooled more significantly than what he had planned that they would need to be. So things like that happening for an extended period over summer months, when usually probably there's not much going on in a school, can throw this pretty quickly.
Therese, I see Michael Barker looking to ask you a question as well as Paul. So let's start with Michael.
Therese, thank you so much for this, and you got out ahead of it, but I think you've done a wonderful job of reconstructing what is reconstructible here. What I would add maybe to what Mark, and it's sort of in the vein of what Mark and Marty were talking about, but I would offer, if we could maybe, and I think the impulse was there with the weather data, if we could find some way to normalize this to make it apples to apples year over year, like, I mean, even something as simple as population of students, or, I mean, kilowatt hours is, I think we're gonna have some of the same issue with usage data in that way, but just sort of give us a way to see it as something per something. And again, I start to think about the number of people using it, but it might also be the number of hours in the day, and whatever's kind of gettable, right, is what we're looking for. But I think you've done a very good job with presenting the data that's available. And I think we're just one step away from trying to get our minds around kind of what's an apples to apples.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I agree, Michael. It was frustrating for me not to have people to say, could you help me analyze these results? But like I said, there really wasn't at that time. So, but I'll get back to it. We could try.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Did somebody else
Laney,
have a
I would just echo what Michael has said and what others have said with regard to your work here, Therese. It's very useful and very well done, particularly doing it under the circumstances in which you did, with Mark leaving employ and so on. So as a follow-up to what Michael has suggested and what Mark originally suggested, do we currently have the capacity and the skill sets and the resources to put together a follow-up report which can compare what has been done here on an apples-to-apples basis, so we have some trending analysis that we can more fully understand as to whether or not this investment was worthwhile?
Well, this could be updated, Paul. You know, I cut off at 12/31 because I worked on it in January and February of 2020. So I had to have a cutoff. I don't know if any more projects were done since then. And if not, so much the better really for this purpose, because it would give us this without anything added to it, which would just maybe complicate looking at this. So I could carry this through to 2020, which will give you another year.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're asking for. I think through 2019 would be sufficient, but we need it put together in a way that we can more fully understand the real savings after taking out the financing costs and so on a year-to-year basis.
Yep, I can do it.
Yeah, Therese, I think that the question is simple enough, and in even, in your findings when you get there, based on the analysis, was the program successful in generating the energy savings to offset the loan, which was the entire goal of the project? And I don't know if that we have that answer.
I try not to opine, quite honestly, because when I was working on this, I saw how right it could go and how wrong it could go. And if we could move to the first finding, because this is really where I talk about it.
Okay.
And it says savings or estimates and may or may not be consistently realized. Mr. Deming utilized building business management systems, which is a BMS data, to view, schedule, and monitor utility efficiency and utilization. Cost is known, but consumption is difficult to predict, as anticipated savings can be distorted by unplanned use, changing rates, period of unusually warm or cold weather, snowfall, rainfall, use of space heaters, open windows, etc. I mean, no matter how hard you try to plan and schedule this, I think you can see the past, but I mean, I just don't know if you can say it worked as perfectly as we thought it would.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions, or do you want Therese to move on?
One other thing that I will say about this was that I saw pictures, before and after pictures, and to look at some of this equipment that was 50 or 60 years old, it was shameful, quite honestly.
Those are some ugly boilers.
Yeah. And then, to see pictures of after, and it's an amazing thing to see it like that. And I would say that regardless of saving every amount that you thought that you might or should, some of that really just had to be done. And I find it hard to believe that replacing a boiler that's 60 years old is not going to bring about savings. I mean, there's just so much technologically that can go on now that is energy savings as far as equipment goes. And the alternative is to wait and let it break down and then go through the whole thing, which probably would have been worse. So,
Therese,
yeah.
I don't think there's any question that these were projects that needed to be done for a long period of time, and we're not negating that. You've obviously been able to corroborate that what we said we were buying, we got, it was in place. So I think that that's definitely, we would have needed to do these projects. What we want to do is see if we manage them correctly, that we use the right financing to do that. So I'll stick to where we are as far as the findings, and then, any other stuff, hopefully as we manage other projects, or as the Board of Ed manages other projects, they'll have a better idea of what controls
Yeah.
they need to have in place.
Okay. Okay.
Also, do want to interrupt you. I did see that Steve Troy joined us really quickly. I'm hoping that he has babies to share. Steve, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know if everyone can see me. Hold on. Can you see me?
We can see you.
Are you seeing me or are you seeing the
I'm
rug?
is it a rug?
Okay, so then here. Here is Amanda. I can't see what you're seeing though.
Now
That's
we
really
see
fun.
you.
You.
You only see me?
Yes,
Yes.
we see you.
Okay, hold on.
Flip it around.
Okay,
That-
there you go. That's Amanda.
And she's smiling.
Yeah, she was born on September 7th. She was born 5 pounds, 8 ounces.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a great weight.
Yeah. She's 6.5 pounds now though. In a little bit
Holy
in a
smokes.
week. Yeah.
Oh, so precious.
So she's sleeping.
Oh my God.
This is my wife. The
Hi,
Congratulations.
thank you.
All right, and then here's Abraham. This is my daughter Samantha.
Hello.
That's Abe.
Oh my God, he's adorable.
Oh my word.
He was 4
And
4 pounds 5 ounces when he was born.
Wow,
And he's
that's like almost 10 pounds of babies.
yeah. And they were born on Labor Day. No other
you know,
day.
my girl, my daughter, this is Christine.
Yep. Hey Christine.
My daughter was a whole pound and a half more than her twin brother
Oh really? Did he catch up or did she catch up?
too. That's interesting. Oh, quiet.
He's smiling
Yeah.
too.
And
Awesome.
here are other twins. There's Chloe. And then here's Callie. Oh, there's Callie.
Oh,
All right. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to share some good news.
that's awesome, Steve. Thanks so much. Get
All
some
right,
sleep
thanks.
over there.
Thanks for everything. And sorry I'm missing the call, but I'm listening at least, so that's good.
Excellent. Have a good
Okay.
night. Bye, Cindy.
Thanks. Bye. Thank
Lainey?
you.
This
Yeah.
is Cindy Katsky. I just want to say this is the best meeting ever.
Yeah, so far it's been kind of fun. All right, I apologize for the interruption, Therese, but Elaine told me that Steve had popped on and I didn't want them to be hanging around.
No apology necessary.
All right,
So I will go on to finding number 2, which was perhaps at least in part due to employee turnover. Accounting documentation was difficult to locate and in some instances was requested directly from United Illuminating or Bank of America, who was deep, both of them were deep into this. So the ledger postings for loan transactions and the receipt of incentives were inconsistent and in some minor instances posted incorrectly. No record of reconciliation was located for an account utilized for multiple years and multiple projects, which included postings for payment of $8.3 million of vendor invoices, receipt of $6.8 million in Bank of America loan proceeds, receipt of incentives of $1.3 million distributed by school to 19 separate projects, and installment payments of $2 million toward 3 loans. Everything was just dumped into one account. Nobody had ever looked at it. Nobody had balanced it. Nobody had categorized it. It just sat there and we hoped for the best. So I had to go through that ledger line by line by line and say, what is it? Where's it go? And that's how I got the schedule that is on page 9. That's how that got put together.
Michael, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a practical one. Through this exercise, Therese, is this account now reasonably reconciled, even if it's not formally reconciled?
Well, I worked on it through 12/31/19, and I left a list of items that were in there that shouldn't have been in there. They were coded and showed up in there, and I chased them down, and they were like IT expenses or something. So I don't know if those adjustments were posted, but, and I don't know what's happened since.
Hey, good night. I love you. We're getting a lot of kids tonight.
Hi,
Right, you were
Lauren.
great. I heard all of that. Thank you. Oh boy. All right. Thanks.
Any other questions?
So I would have put this information into separate accounts, and even at that, I would have reconciled it. And then lastly, finding number 3, from the onset, there was a lack of agreement between the town and Board of Ed in relation to loan accounting, ownership, and transactional management, as well as roles related to purchasing, bidding, and bid awards. There was minimal relationship between BOE facilities personnel and BOE accounting personnel. So I have to say, just nobody talked to anybody else. Accounting didn't work with Mark. Mark didn't know what they were doing. He didn't really care what they were doing, quite honestly. He felt that they
Therese?
did that work and he did his work.
Yeah, Therese, I think that one of the things that is outstanding is the external audit for the Board of Education on their operational procedures and things like that. So I think we'll let them kind of talk more about, things that they can do better moving forward,
Yeah.
and we won't really dwell on, what they did or didn't
Yeah.
do so far.
Okay, I mean, it would have been helpful at the time, and hopefully the external auditor will get them fixed up. So that's it.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Dave Irwin from the Board of Education Facilities and Scott Kerr are on the call. If anybody has a specific question for them, they just really wanted to be here to hear Teresa's report. Michael? And then I see Mark after.
I think it's probably a question for Scott, but first I'll just say I listened into most of the finance call for the Board of Education before this, and I thought you guys were asking the right questions. What was disappointing was how few real answers there were, and I'm just wondering if you can give us a sort of a temperature on how much of the stuff in this report has been relayed to new management, which I know is brand new, and what the plan is
financial management
now. And I'm sorry, yeah, what?
Yeah, I mean, a new financial management.
Yes, brand new,
You know?
Yeah, brand new. And I just sort of between now and October, they've got to present a budget. And to what extent do you feel some of this stuff is still going to have to be worked out in terms of controls and all the stuff that was referenced with regard to the audit?
Yeah, I mean, I have faith that they are going to be on the list of things that we have to tackle. I mean, there's you listen to the conversation this evening. I think we're going to continue to ask those questions. It wasn't really fair to drag Al Cameron through that, when Paul's taking over. So yeah, I mean, I have confidence that the Board of Ed Finance Committee is going to ask those questions, and that, it's good for me to hear this report, hear your guys' questions, and we'll take that back.
Okay. Anybody else? Marty?
Oops. Yeah, Scott, I just, a couple questions related. Is this an appropriate time that I can ask a couple of questions related to Board of Ed, Lainey, right now? Or?
Actually, we have as a discussion item coming up at the end, we have some COVID-related expenses and some Board of Ed stuff. So if we can hold on that, if you wouldn't mind.
All right, and Scott, if you can stick around for that aspect, I do have some questions that would be terrific if we can address those with you as well towards the end of the call, apparently.
All right.
Okay.
Elaine?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one
Sorry, Mark.
question. Did we not a few months ago, refinance all these anyway?
We did.
So if Therese is to do a further analysis, wouldn't we have to take the refinancing into consideration to do any analysis of when our recovery period is?
Sure. Seems clear.
Okay.
Mark?
Thank you.
Yeah, just Therese, looking at page 9, which has the completion date, it would seem by reading these completion dates that a majority of the projects really didn't get completed until either the end, right at the end of 16, or even in 17 and 18, if that's a fair, if I'm reading that completion column right. And there's a few projects back in 15 with some lights, but a lot of this looks to be late 16 December or 17 and 18 for completion. And I don't know if I'm reading that correctly or not.
You are. You are.
So yeah, so just taking that into consideration, looking back to the summary of expenses by year, you know, you haven't really gotten to a point where all the projects are really until 17 or even 18 kind of up and running and beginning to realize the expenses, right? So, you know, to the point before of the refinancing of the equipment, you know, you're kind of at a good spot to say, here's the new refinance of the equipment to do the analysis that we just talked about, because really now is the time when you should start to see the majority of the savings as all the projects are now finalized. So I just want to make sure I read that correctly. Thanks, Therese.
Sure.
All right, anybody else before we move on? Okay, thank you, Therese.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're moving on to the town treasurer's report. Anthony's not joining us this evening. He did want to let us know there's no great revelations this month. If interest rates remain where they are, we will be cutting it close to our numbers. And if the interest rates go up a little bit after the election, we might have a little bit of breathing room. Any specific questions, though, you can send directly to him. Does anybody have anything in specific that they're looking at in that report? Michael?
I did want to go out of my way to say I really appreciated the inclusion of the year over year. That was really helpful.
I will let him know. Thank you. Maria, did it work okay for you?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. So we're moving on to supplemental appropriations and transfers. Mr. Timpanelli?
Yes, before I start, I'm assuming that there's no necessity for me to read every budget account number with regard to these 13 items that we need to act upon tonight. So I'll just kind of say it generically.
I believe that's acceptable. Mr. Shopik, you're on the line. Is that okay?
I figured out how to unmute myself. Yes, it's fine.
Right.
I never doubt Mr. Timpanelli's words.
Appreciate your confidence, Dan.
No problem.
So item number one is a supplemental appropriation. Item number 09-20-01 from the general fund balance to various accounts, tree warden, technology services, fringe benefits at workers' comp and social services in the amount of $253,947. I move its adoption.
Second.
Second, Michael, thank you. Any discussion? Maria, you want to walk us through that?
Sorry, some technical difficulties here. So basically, this is just year-end transfers. The tree warden, we talked several times about those trees related to the storms. And so there was about 160,000 over budget, of which we talked about the snow account being under budget by 145,000. Technology, that had to do with additional staffing that worked late hours to do the Zoom meetings and any other technology issues with COVID, related to COVID. Fringe benefits, it was over 398,000. I was able to cover some of it through transfers, and the difference of 84,000 is covered as a supplemental. I provided you guys with a schedule showing that we settle large claims that total approximately 500,000, and that's a reason for one of the reasons that that account went over so much. And then just social services over, and I couldn't cover with their, within their budget. So there's a supplemental just to cover the overtime related to COVID, additional staffing needed for the food pantry and so forth.
Elaine, did you have a question?
Okay, yeah, one quick thing, Maria. It's good that you mentioned that in this supplemental, there's a certain amount of money for the workers' comp, 84,000, but there's also a transfer someplace else. So
Yeah.
anytime something's going to appear in more than one place, it's helpful for you to mention it at the same time. So we're looking at this, and it's not just workers' comp was over 84,000. It was really 300 and something.
Right,
plus
I did mention 398,000.
Yeah, so it's good that you mention it that way. So this way we kind of put all
Okay.
the pieces together. Thank you.
Perfect.
Marty?
Yeah, quick question on the tree warden stuff. I want to make sure I understand. I thought, is this transfer that was done, we had talked about dealing with a bunch of the trees towards last year before the major storm came through, right? So
Correct.
this is all for prior storm. This was proactively taking down trees before.
That's correct. Oak trees that Dimitri talked about and the state requested that we handle them.
Okay, so this has
And,
nothing to do with the cleanup that happened from the storms. They're more recent storms. That's in this year's budget.
Yeah,
correct?
it's in this fiscal year because it just happened in August.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. All right, so okay, thank you.
Yep.
Maria, is it also correct that this number of $253,000 plus dollars is included in your fund balance
That's correct.
report that you presented to us? So you made the assumption that this would come out of that fund balance.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions on the supplemental appropriation from the general fund to those various accounts for 253,947? Okay, just as a reminder and for Phyllis's benefit, Steve asked that Mark Mascola vote in his place this evening. I know he's listening in on the call, but I'll go ahead with this. Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and yes, so that motion passes 6-0. Mr. Timpanelli,
Next item, 09-20-02, also a supplemental appropriation from the general fund balance to Public Works building maintenance in the amount of $22,978. I move its adoption.
Second.
thank you. Paul moves and Michael seconds. Discussion, Maria?
This account was actually over budget by $51,000. We were able to transfer within the department 28,005. So the remainder had to come out of the general fund to cover the deficit. And basically that had to do with a lot of maintenance that was done at different buildings. Some were emergency, some were anticipated, and some were not. I know we always have problems with our AC, and there's always a contractor that has to come out. So these were unanticipated expenses related to buildings.
Any other questions? Elaine?
Yeah, just a quick one. It says the police department ventilation system. Didn't we bond all kinds of renovations and repairs for that building? Wouldn't that have been part of that, Maria?
I think that part has to do with the other side of the building. I think the ventilation with the bond has to do with the range and the bathrooms and cells downstairs in the basement. I
Okay.
think that's separate.
Okay.
I believe it's separate.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, really quickly, we'll run through Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'm yes also, 6-0. Motion passes. Mr. Timpanelli,
Item number 09-20-03 is a budget transfer from the town hall contingency account to 7 various accounts, treasurer, EMS, and 5 mate-related, the union-related accounts for the amount of $69,929. I move its adoption.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Maria?
So these are transfers from the contingency for contracts that settle during the year. So basically, all contracts settle during the year except the fire marshals and even the non-union employees increase was also in contingency. You will notice that in subsequent transfers, you will see that some departments were able to cover the contract increases, and therefore there was no need to transfer from contingency. Quite a few other departments. Some of these also had to do with the fact that some of the directors retire or left town, and they had a payment for accumulated vacation and sick time, and they were small departments that couldn't absorb that payout. For example, HR, human resources, human service. So that's basically what that account is for.
Elaine? Hold on.
Unmute myself, apologize, not quick enough. I get that some departments had money, and Mate and Mathis are not very large unions, nor is the fire marshal. And obviously, when we look at the contingency, you explain it to us and then you take all the paperwork back, so we don't have anything to relate to a year later. But I am a little taken aback that the difference is $500,000. I'm trying to understand how we put so much in there that we didn't need. It's $500,000.
Well, like I said, sometimes there's enough in the salaries accounts. For example, the public works departments, if they have vacancies and they don't fill those vacancies, there's that surplus in there to cover any contract negotiations and settlements.
Right, but did Highway settle this year? Because
Yes.
I only see Mate and Mathis.
Yeah, like I said, the public works, they were able to cover within their budget. If you look at the transfers we will talk about, parks, for example, they had, they had enough in salaries to cover. Well, he didn't have that much actually,
Yeah,
because he had enough in salaries to even cover the contract settlement. We can look at that.
I mean, I guess I'm certainly questioning our budget abilities when Highway is our second largest department. If we go after Highway, I'm gonna off the top of my head say it's about a $5 million budget.
Approximately, yeah.
And so that's a lot of salaries because we are mostly labor intensive, which is understandable. So to be able to be off by $500,000, I mean, we put 575,000 in there and we only needed not even 70,000. And so it raises a lot of red flags to me about our budget process. I'm not sure that I ever remember us being that far off.
Oh, I think every year. Well, the reason this year is so high is because all contracts are up for renewal and for settlement. And at budget time, we don't know what they're going to settle at. We assume every employee is going to stay there. We assume all positions are, they're filled.
Right, which is the only assumption we can make.
Right.
Is that this is the population we have.
Right.
They're all going to stay and they're going to get a raise of X.
Right.
So either we were way off, or it's just not falling into place for me.
I will come up with the actual retro, what was actually paid out on those contracts. We'll come up with that information.
Thank you. You understand my concern on this
Yep,
one.
I do, because I always look at it the same way you're looking at it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Look at that, I was muted. Anybody else have any questions? If not, I'll run through the roll call for a vote. Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I am a yes also. That's 6-0, motion passes. Mr. Timpanelli, moving on.
Item number 09-20-04. Again, a transfer from Public Works Highway Professional Development account to Public Works Salaries account in the amount of $1,471. I move its adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Maria, it's a small one. Maria, you're muted.
That's basically just a salary to cover small shortages, and that to do with the one of the maid employees. And that's a small department that doesn't have enough to transfer from.
Anybody have any other questions? And I'll start with Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and Lainey McHugh, yes, also 6-0, motion passes. Mr. Timpanelli,
Item number 09-20-05. Again, a transfer from Public Works Salaries to Public Works Salaries for $54,259. I move its adoption.
Second.
thank you, Michael. Maria,
So that account is also, the larger amount has to do with salaries, full-time permanent, and this is a Public Works contract, both the supervisors and the regular Public Works Parks contract settle. The salaries were $45,600 over budget, which had to do with the contract settlement. As you can see, there was enough in other accounts to transfer. That was the large deficit in that account.
okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Maria, even though we don't have any exceptionally big numbers here in any of these transfers with regard to Public Works, there are a lot of them. Does this essentially mean that we didn't do a real good job last year at budgeting for the Public Works division?
I think a lot of it was not, some of it was related to COVID. We didn't do everything that we were supposed to do because we couldn't.
So those expenses that are related to COVID, I assume they will ultimately be within the COVID expense report.
That's correct.
Did it also have to do with some reorganization in that department, Maria?
Well, that could be. I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Then I will call for a vote. Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'm Lainey McHugh, yes, 6-0. Mr. Timpanelli,
Item number 09-20-06, transfer from Public Works Building Maintenance to Public Works Salaries in the amount of $31,988. I move its adoption.
Second.
thank you, Michael. Maria,
As previous stated, we requested a supplemental for $22,000. We were able to transfer $28,000 of it because the deficit was actually $51,000. And again, it had to do with maintenance repairs to different buildings throughout town.
okay. So all in favor of a transfer from within the Public Works Department for $31,988. Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also, 6-0, motion passes.
Item number 09-20-07 from Public Works Fleet Maintenance, Transportation, Gas and Oil to Public Works vehicle repair in the amount of $4,184. I move its adoption.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Maria, anything?
It's a small variance in the repair account, vehicle repair.
Anybody have a question on that?
I know that gas and oil, you'll see there's a large surplus because vehicles were last used from March, April till now, till the end of June. And the fuel, the gas was actually a lower rate.
Okay. We're gonna call for a vote on a transfer within Public Works Director for $4,184. Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'm yes, also 6-0, motion passes. Moving on.
Item
Paul?
number 09-20-08, again, a transfer from recycling services and fees to recycling salaries and overtime in the amount of $18,525. I move its adoption.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Maria?
Same issue, the full-time salaries over budget because of the settlement of the contract. And we're able to transfer from the contractual services.
Okay, any questions on that? Then I'll call for a vote. Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'm yes also, 6-0, motion passes. Mr. Timpanelli?
Item number 09-20-09 to 09-20-31. A number of transfers from various accounts to various accounts, the amount totaling $733,000, $733,320. I move its adoption.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you, Michael. Maria? It's a lot of little monies.
A lot of little money. Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
up.
sure, are there questions to specific ones? Do you want me to go line by line?
No, does anybody have any specific, Elaine, you have a question?
Yeah. You're right. Most of them are small. The only larger ones seem to be in the fringe benefits,
Yeah.
medical, dental. And obviously there's that 300,000 in workers' comp. The unemployment makes sense. I guess I just want to know, I'm assuming as a percentage, the FICA and the medical that we have a surplus in, it's really not that much of the account. It's probably a relatively small percentage.
Yeah, but the reason that's a surplus is, like before we said, if there's vacancies, now we're not filling those positions, so we don't have FICA in that account. The unemployment, we were told that we will get reimbursed about 50%, but we're not sure when we'll get in that.
Sure.
The state bills us a month later, so, and supposedly that the reimbursement they'll submit the reimbursement to FEMA, to the federal government. They'll get the reimbursement and they'll apply it to our account. So that could take months. So that's why, it's a surplus, it's a deficit in that account.
And you had a vacancy in the finance department?
Yes, we just filled it. Started on Monday. Yeah, we haven't been full staff for like 1.5 years. It's been tough.
Sure. And then EMS has a fair bit of movement around. If they started on a new model yet, or?
They are in the process of hiring the staff. I believe they're just about starting with the new model. Most likely will come to the board next month to make the transfer from the contractual account to the salaries.
Okay, so they're close to that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the health department, I assume, is because someone retired. That's a fairly small department, although why they had the part-time, they had quite a bit left in the part-time they needed in the full-time.
I'm sorry, what account?
In health department.
Oh, yes, they had a retirement in that department as well. Yeah.
Okay. And then the only other thing that appears in a number of places, which I am a little confused about, in education, they had excess in their interest, which I understand because we refinanced some bonds, but they were short in their principal. And that happens again.
Yeah.
It happens in two places, obviously in our debt service and theirs. Can you?
Yes, I looked at that. It's related to the fact that, well, debt service on our side. Sometimes it's the classification between Board of Ed and town projects. And also the fact that if the projects are completed, we may bond ahead of time. Meaning when I do the budget, I assume that whatever we have in notes, we will be bonding. But in some instances, which I think this is what happened here, we bonded more because the projects were completed.
Okay, I understood. That makes sense.
Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, this is probably more of an education for me question, but in workers' comp, after the transfer, there's still a large balance in the account, 84,000.
Right.
What happens to that? Anything, or is that just?
Well, we just approved, you just approved that supplemental on item 1. And that was
That's
to
in there?
take care of the 84,000.
Oh, okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And Mark, you know that we're self-insured for workers' comp, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Marty?
Yeah, just one quick thing on the education part that Elaine was referring to. On the transportation travel reimbursement, that we needed an additional 90,000 for that. Remind me what that is.
I asked a question of the Board of Education. Of that, actually $66,000 will be reversed. I'm not sure if you want to make that adjustment now when we're able to transfer, so I don't think you really need to. But what does Board of Ed say? She says, and I sent you the backup the other day, something about salaries not being properly budgeted. For example, the administrative salary, nothing was budgeted for 18,000. They over budget. It basically was.
Why is that here? I guess I'm asking. Well, isn't this stuck in their Board of Ed budget? Like, why is it appearing here?
No, the transportation for the non-public schools is in the town side of the budget.
Okay, that's what that is. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Is everybody clear on that? Okay, Elaine?
Yeah, sorry, I have one other thing, Maria. The last item where we're transferring to my two favorite departments, from the street lights to the fire hydrants, forgetting about my opinion, they're two different departments. Can we make that transfer?
We had done it in the past where the board allowed us to do transfers in the utilities between departments.
Okay.
So I continue that.
They're small, but they are technically different departments.
They are.
So, okay, thanks.
All right, Michael?
This may not be completely relevant, but so tell me if I'm just off base with this. The transportation costs for the private schools, on the finance call for the Board of Education, there was some discussion about these grants and the grants not being completely exhausted because the parts of them that remain were earmarked for private schools. And I guess my question is basically, if the revenue in the grant is living in the Board of Ed's system, and we are possibly incurring costs in the town system, does that get reimbursed from that side? Or how does that work, if it does?
No, it does not get reimbursed from that side, but we do get some state money for transportation. Let me take a look. Yes, we do get approximately, well, we used to get. We're no longer getting transportation for the public schools. We did used to get in the past.
Boy, that was a whole journey we went on there. I was so excited we were getting it, and then we weren't.
Sorry.
Thanks for coming. There will be no money.
I remember getting it at one point.
Okay. Is everybody good with this set of transfers in the amount of $733,320 from the various accounts as listed in your packets? Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also, 6-0. Mr. Timpanelli, moving on.
Number 09-20-32 from sewer account extraordinary items to sewer account utilities and interest in the amount of $53,400. I move its adoption.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to start calling you Abbott and Costello. Maria?
Basically, the increase of 51,000 had to do with the fact that they had to put in 4 new pumps to the new pump station. I send you a backup from Bill Mauer. They had to increase the strength of the pumps. I don't know enough about those, so I rely on the professionals on that one.
Apparently poop does not flow uphill.
So it wasn't anticipated at the time, so we had to.
All right. Anybody have any questions about that? Elaine?
That's not what they're saying. They're taking it from extraordinary items to utilities and interest.
Right, because they had to add 4 new pumps.
Costs
I
of-
guess that creates more, generates more electricity.
It's confusing because typically new pumps would be more efficient, but if these are addition rather than replacements, it would make sense.
I believe that's the case.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Then we'll call for a vote on the transfer to the utilities within Public Works for the poop pumps. $53,400. Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'll be a yes also, 6-0, motion passes. We're almost there.
Item number 09-20-33 from Tashua Knowles salaries to Tashua Knowles various accounts in the amount of $18,508. I move its adoption.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Maria?
So basically, the large item has to do with overtime, and that had to do with COVID because employees had to be called in. I do not know all the details, but all I know is that they did need to come in and they incurred the overtime.
Now, will any of that be reimbursable?
No, because this it's actually something that's in their contract that this is throughout every department. If the MAID contract is something in their contract that states that if town hall is closed for a storm, then these employees that have to come in will have to get paid time and a half.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Not a question, it's just a comment. I was a member of a golf club for 3 years until this year. This year, I am no longer a member of the golf club. I now golf at Tashua Knowles, maybe twice a week. These guys deserve everything we pay them. That is one fabulous golf course.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Timpanelli, I'll take it you're a yes on this.
I'm a yes.
All right, Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'll be a yes also, 6-0. Motion passes for the transfer of $18,508. Mr.
Item
Timpanelli?
number 09-20-34 from, again, transfers from various accounts to various accounts in the amount of $5,913. I move its adoption.
Second.
Thanks, Michael. Maria?
These are the various transfers that are under my authority to transfer. If they're less than $1,000, the board has authorized me to make these transfers. So
All right.
unless there are specific questions.
Anybody want to argue with her?
Well, I mean, that was, I hate to make it take longer because the point was to save time, but like, why is it coming up before us if Maria can make these transfers?
Well, I think we just have to approve it after the fact that we at least know that they happened.
Yeah, no, I got that. I just wondered why it was taken up as an item.
I know we've always done it, then I've been on the board, Elaine.
We need to, no matter what authority we delegate to her, the charter makes us responsible. So at some point, she has to present them to us and we have to approve them. We just don't hold her up through the year.
Thank you, Elaine. That makes total sense.
All right. Paul?
I'm not quite sure why we separated this last one from the previous one, but nonetheless, we did. Item number 09-.
Wait, no, we have to vote on this one.
Okay.
Sorry, I started
Yes.
talking and got us off track, Paul. Go
You
ahead.
got us off track, Mike. My vote is a yes.
Thank you. Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'm yes also, 6-0. Motion passes. Last one, Paul.
09-20-36. Transfer from various accounts to various accounts for $1,000. I move its adoption.
Second.
All right.
To answer your question, Paul,
Yes.
the reason being is these were final entries at the end. The other ones were already done, so I had to make that one as a separate
Okay.
transfer.
All right. Paul,
I'm a yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yep.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola.
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm a yes also, 6-0. Motion passes for the various transfers in the amount of $1,000. All right. That takes care of our transfers and supplementals for the evening. We have a few discussion items, but before we move on to those discussion items, I just want to take a brief minute to express my thanks to our town employees, specifically those of the 4 unions who agreed to take the furlough concessions that we asked to help the town meet its financial obligations this year. These include our MATE employees, our Mathis employees, our Department of Public Works employees, and our Department of Public Works supervisors. We recognize that you routinely go above and beyond to make Trumbull the amazing place it is. And I want to thank you for working with us to ensure that we put ourselves in a financial position to sustain Trumbull during uncertain times. We certainly do appreciate your willingness to come to the table and work with us. To the members of the Board of Finance, I spoke at length with Tom McCarthy, who agreed to come to our next meeting because there was a rather lengthy agenda tonight, and he'll speak to us in detail as to what those concessions were and fill you in. We'll have to do that in an executive session. If you have any specific questions, he will be on our October agenda. Is that okay?
That's fantastic.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
So I just wanted to make sure that I expressed our appreciation to them.
Yeah.
We have some discussion items. The first one is our COVID expenses for the fiscal year to date for the town and the Board of Education. Dave Irwin and Scott Kerr are on the line. And I think it says Dave Irwin in 2 places, but I think that's John Morello. So hi, Mr. Morello. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
I look a lot better since John is on. I didn't know who you were going to pick.
I don't know. It's a toss-up who has more hair.
Yeah. Well.
All right. Maria, you want to start with the town side as far as COVID expenses, what we're looking at?
So you have a schedule as of June 30th, which we also submitted the one for the Board of Ed. We submitted $366,000 to FEMA for both the town and Board of Ed. Just last week, we found out that now technology may be denied, and that's approximately, I have that amount somewhere. It's the 195. So it's about 200,000 in technology that will probably be deemed ineligible. Now, if it's deemed ineligible by FEMA, I'm not sure if the state will cover it. We're still waiting. They haven't approved it. They're still reviewing it at the FEMA. And then we have to file with the state by the end of next month. And that's only for the quarter ending June 30th. I don't have figures for, actually, I may have figures up to now.
While you're looking for those, I see Michael Barker has his hand raised, and then Marty.
Just the simplest question, and I'm sure I'm just misreading it. You said about $200,000 in ineligible technology spend, but maybe I'm misreading it. I'm only seeing 21,000, but that's probably because I'm misreading your schedule.
Would that be the Zoom
Yeah.
licenses also, Maria?
I'm sorry, you are right. 21 plus the 34. You are correct. I was,
Plus the 34.
It's 21 and then the 34.
yes, you're correct.
That's the
55,
operation.
56.
Oh, that sounds much better.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
about 50 odd all in, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So instead of getting 300, well, we submitted 366. Right now it's 311,000. That's possible eligible at this point.
All right, I'm just glad I'm literate. Thank you.
Yeah, you're correct. Sorry about that.
Marty?
Hi, yeah, so I do have a question with regard to the Board of Ed food service. So I see here that it says $86,000. When I was listening to the call previously, when Board of Ed previously, when you looked at their food account in January, it was 200,000 in deficit. They ended the year 600,000 in deficit. And it looks like we're getting 86,000 back. And on the phone call I just listened to, as I understood, it sounded like we were not going to get any money back. So I'm not sure if this is all related to the same thing. What I understand is that we made available to everybody in town, to every student in town, whether they had a need or did not have a need, up to approximately June or so, they could get, I think, lunch. They could get lunch. And then in this year, as we marched forward, we made it available to every family, I believe, or at least to what I've seen, breakfast and lunch, again, regardless of need. So what I'm trying to understand is kind of twofold. Are we doing this with, I was told previously, my understanding was we were going to get reimbursed for all of this. So I was pretty shocked listening to the finance call this evening to hear that we were not going to get reimbursed for that. And so that's part one. And part two is, if we're not getting reimbursed, I really am puzzled why we're making this available to 100% of our families as opposed to those just in need. So if you could help me understand that, because now that lunch account is 600,000 in deficit, and that was up to the end of the year, not sure how big it's going to grow to. So hopefully Scott or Dave, if you could address it, that'd be great.
I wasn't dealing with the lunch, Marty, but I can speak to the fact that the serving of the lunch was mandated by the state and federal government because we're on the free and reduced lunch program, and they extended it beyond the students that qualify as a reduced lunch or as a free lunch. I can't tell you the rationale why, but I know that was dictated to us when the COVID began on March 13th. Scott, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, the only thing I can add to that is that in addition to the state mandating that we provide meals, the federal government extended their, I can't remember the exact name of it. It's a summer food program. So what they did in the spring is they essentially started their summer program early, and they have that program to feed families throughout the summer, kids that wouldn't get meals otherwise. And so they basically extended that into the spring, and now they've extended it through the end of the year. So we likely will get reimbursed some amount from that program, but it won't be the whole amount because they reimburse based on your free and reduced percentage.
I see.
But there will be. I don't think I heard Al say, he had to close it, the food service account at 6:30, right? That is what it is at that point. It doesn't mean that we won't get reimbursed at some later date.
I would imagine we would get something because this was done statewide, Marty. So I know everyone would be in a similar situation. I know people in other towns with a great deal of wealth, they were feeding the whole town as well.
Okay, thank you, number one. And then the related question to that is I've always been confused by this. I'm not understanding how the account can close in deficit. And then what I also heard on the phone call, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought what Al said was, and this is migrating a little bit from COVID, but because we're on the topic, I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. I thought what he was also referring to is that there was, in essence, a $917,000 funding cliff that was put in last year, number one, and that if this is, so I'm trying to understand that piece, and I'm also trying to understand how are we allowed to keep a negative balance on the food account when it crosses over a fiscal year. I don't quite understand how we're able to do that, and maybe you can clarify that.
I mean, it feels way out of scope from the COVID expenses, Marty. I actually heard the same report you did on the call, so I'm not really prepared to try to answer that question at this point.
Okay, I guess then I just would say as somebody from the board could come back and on those two elements, just make sure we're clear on that piece. How do you run a negative over the course of the year on the food piece? And maybe I don't know how much is COVID related to that or not, or how much is the free lunch, how we went from 200,000 to 600,000. And then is this 86,000? I'm just a little confused on the whole food account. So as we can get clarification on what's happening there, that would really be helpful.
Okay, yeah, that is it. I agree with you, but I think it's a separate topic and we'll address it, in the Board of Ed Finance Committee meetings.
Normally, I can just add a little insight. I don't know the specifics on this with how it's done in Trumbull, but normally you try to keep your lunch account self-supporting, and usually at the end of the year, if there's some deficit, the Board of Ed will hopefully shore that up or ask for a request. Again, I think Scott's point of bringing this for a separate item would be worthwhile because usually they try to shore the account up at the end of the year or help out that account if it's run separately from the Board of Ed books.
I do know that that account is considered a special agency account.
Right.
Just like our special agency accounts on the town side, they do cross over fiscal years. They're non-lapsing accounts. So we can come back to that. Elaine and then Michael.
Can I just, the other COVID question I had?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just related to this, I know the survey that was put into the state to say how much money was required with COVID, we had put in and said that we needed $5.4 million. And I understand that the state provided a total of $2.1 million. And I'm trying to understand, did we spend the 5.4? Did we spend the 2.1? And I'm just trying to understand, if we spent 5.4 and the state only gave us 2.1, where did the money come from and how are we managing that? If we were able to get by with 2.1, that's terrific, but I'm curious what changed. And you may not have that information now either, but that was, I just wanted to make sure I understood how that was happening as well.
The grant I wrote down, Marty, and again, I'm just giving you this, what I know. I wasn't in charge, but the grant I believe we got, at least in the second grant that came out in the summer when we were asked to fill out the survey, was $1,631,155. So there could have been another grant that brought it up to the 2 million. And I think the state came back and asked the superintendent at the time to try to readjust some of those numbers because those numbers I think were out of sync with what the rest of the state was looking at. Actually, Trumbull did end up on the high side of receiving those grants. And there's a full list of what was awarded to each town.
Okay, so at the end of the day, I'm just trying to understand, were we able to operate within the grant? And if we needed more money, I'm just concerned. It was such a challenging budget year last year for the money that went into the Board of Ed. If the 2.1 million grants that came in was not sufficient and you spent more, where did it come from and how are we going to deal with it? So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Certainly.
Elaine?
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers for certain operations like wipes, gloves, disinfectants, hand sanitizers. I assume this is an ongoing expense, and are we able to secure what we need?
We do our best. It's a great question, Elaine. It is an ongoing expense because I know when I spoke to Laney a few weeks ago, this would be something that would be ongoing. I'm glad John is here. You know, obviously, once we've opened school, we saw some different needs, and people became more aware, more nervous. So, John, I'll let you try to take Ms. Hammer's question a little farther with ongoing and our
Sure.
supply ability.
Sure. We've spent just shy of about $340,000 on those supplies that you mentioned, Ms. Hammers, with the wipes, the masks, the disinfectants. And going forward, if we had to project to the end of the year, I mean, I don't know if we're going to have a full, all the children in, if they're going to go to full school days, we're going to need at least another $200,000 for wipes, masks, gowns, sanitizers, gloves, booties, microfiber towels. There's just a lot that comes up during the course of the day. We may even need more desks. I spoke to a bunch of principals today, and they're requesting desks, and we've already bought 250,000 or 250 desks for almost $38,000. So it changes every day. We never know what we're going to get asked to supply, but I can tell you we'll definitely need more cleaning supplies.
And are you finding you can get the supplies you need?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
because that, I mean, that would be my concern. I'm running a medical office, and we used to get a box of 50 surgical masks for $4.83.
Right.
And now we pay $20 for the same box. So when we can actually get our supplier to give them to us.
Sure.
So you need a lot more than I do. So I'm concerned that you're not able to get everything you need.
It's actually more readily accessible now. In the beginning, it was harder to get, and the prices are actually coming down because more vendors have it, so that it's more competitive. But to answer your question, we can get it pretty quick.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you.
If I could just jump in too and thank Maria and Vicky and Kevin and John Aleko, because when we knew we needed those desks, it was obviously a large expenditure, and we knew that there would be a tremendous amount of time to get there, and they worked with us in early July, and we ordered it from a very reputable company, and then John and I went around and made sure that it's particularly with the little ones. We really had to change the whole methodology of how teachers have been teaching probably the last 10 years, teaching at kidney-shaped tables, teaching at regular short tables, and then we moved it into the desks. And I think John's point is valid that if we should go back full-time, I think when they begin to want to phase this in at the lower grades, we probably will need more desks, but the help we received from the town hall was significant, and we would never have been able to do it and cut through some of the stuff. So I just wanted to go on record and thank particularly Maria, Kevin, and Vicky for the support and expediting things for us to get things ready for school.
Vicky, did you want to?
Yep, thanks. It's Vicky Tesoro for Selectmen. Dave, thanks for those kind comments. You know, it's best when we all work together, certainly in this situation, to make sure that everybody is safe as possible. So I just wanted to just verify just one thing we were talking about here, and that is the CRF money that's allocated to the schools. When that original allocation was made, it was made at 1.6 million, I believe, as Dave said.
Yes.
It was adjusted and added to that to bring it up to 2.3 million. That, at least that's what the schedule shows. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what the schedule shows. And it was broken down mainly, about 1.2 million of that was for PPE and cleaning, sanitizing, and so on. And 800,000 was for transportation expenses. So to Marty's point, I think when that survey was done initially by Ralph and probably you, Dave, I think that the survey was at 5.4 million is what they came up with, but we didn't get 5.4 million.
Right.
And I don't think the expectation was that we were ever going to get 5.4 million. I think we were happy to get the amount, as was said, that we're one of the highest in the state to get that amount of money. So, but I guess the question I'm asking at this point is, of that 2.3 million, I think a percentage of it goes to the private schools, first of all, as it did with the other funding. Is that true, Dave?
You know, Vicki, I can't honestly answer that. I wasn't involved with that grant distribution, but I know with some of the stuff at the federal, more of the first grant was earmarked for the privates. I think we had gotten one number and thought we would actually hold on to more of it, and then
Right.
Betsy DeVos at the federal level changed that a little. For the second one, I really couldn't honestly answer that. And as you said, I did not get the updated one from the former super before he left, but you were right on that. Non-personnel cleaning, health, safety, PPE was 1 million too, and those were some of the figures that John and I tried to supply. So again, I can't answer that accurately.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm just wondering at some point if we could ask for some kind of an analysis that shows, you know, what's been spent thus far. And I know John was saying that the expenses, you're expecting to have more, which one would assume you would. You know, how much is going to be covered by this grant funding, you know, that we received? So we can just keep abreast of all of that information.
I did mention to Laney when I spoke, we have that in our facilities office. We keep that. It looked to us, to John and I, like since 7-1, it looked like about 338,000, which we would be well within the 1.2 million.
Right.
We anticipated in personnel some overtime costs for some custodians, and we did build in, I believe, we had told Ralph when he had asked for numbers, we had built in the possible addition of 5 new custodians at the cost of about 300,000, but we have not hired new custodians. So that would be something we did not put into place because we felt we were able to work with what we had.
All right, just to follow up on that, I've had conversations with many teachers and some principals just on that issue of their need, that they are saying that they certainly could use more custodial help to keep the schools as clean as they should be. So I'd like to follow up and continue that discussion, because if there is money available to hire custodians through this grant for, you know, a certain time, that I think we should be looking at that to make sure we're doing what we can in the schools.
I agree, and I think it goes back to what Maria said before with bargaining unit work.
Yeah.
We had the right in our custodial contract to hire 4 part-time people. We used to have 4 on call. 2 have dropped off, but the 2 that we legitimately had budgeted and still have, we have put those 2 people, the part-time ones, into 2 of our bigger schools on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And Wednesday, no, because we have the regular crew and we have no students that day. John, I don't know if you want to add anything to what Vicki has said to that.
No, I mean, if we could certainly add 5 more custodians, I mean, we could certainly use at least 5 more custodians for, especially if we end up extending the amount of kids that are coming back. So, I mean, it's just going to, at some point, we're going to start to fall behind. I mean, we're holding level pretty good right now, but I think at some point, we're definitely going to need more staff, custodial staff.
Just need to temper enthusiasm about the second grant that we got, the 2.1 or 2.2, is the bulk of that money, like over $2 million of it, is in non-personnel categories. So
yeah, but I think that these custodians, I'm not professing that I understand the parameters of these grants, but I believe that the custodians can be hired under that in that 1.2 million as part of the cleaning expenses. But I'm not sure. So that's something I think we could talk about that offline. We don't need to continue the discussion here. So
Michael Barker has a question.
Thanks, Laney. This is all really interesting information. It's a lot of talk about these grants. I'm loving hearing about what's getting reimbursed and what's not. But I understand we don't have any line item control over what happens under the Board of Education, nor should we. But the basic piece of information that I'm missing here is not what's being reimbursed and what's not. And although that's still a little unclear, it's what are the one-time costs to start up this system? And what are the ongoing costs? And how is that going to factor in to the approved budget? Because we don't have any of that here in any way, right? We sort of know what's been, accounted for to date, and we have some sense that there might be additional reimbursements on the horizon. But our worry, it's not our money, right? This is the town's money, right? So we need to figure out whether we're going to be spending more money. And I think the basic position I have is that anything to keep the kids safe, anything to keep the schools open and running well during the pandemic, we would want to support. Well, we got to know what it is. And it's very worrisome 6 months into this pandemic that we don't have a better idea of even what's been spent to date, really, and what of that is one time and what of that is ongoing. So I'm ringing the bell here, and I'm begging that if somebody can do this, and I will help, this is the most important thing we're doing this year, because this has the potential to be the largest overage, possibly in the history of this town, but certainly in the recent history of this budget. So, I don't want to overstate it, but it's really, really concerning that we don't have a better handle on this.
Well,
we could tell you what we've spent to date on PPE and desks and plexiglass and things like that. But without knowing an end date of when this pandemic is going to end, it's kind of impossible for us to put a number on how much more or additional material or PPE that we're going to need.
I'd love to see us try. Projections happen in a vacuum of information all the time. I think we can make a go at it and try to figure out where we're going to be, because we know some things, and we have experts like you, John, that are working on this. We can make some stated parameters around the model where we can look and see if we're going to come in over $109 million at the end of this year. We need to know that soon so we can make decisions. But we don't know any of it now.
Michael, I think you can get some of those numbers. I know Mr. Kerr is on the call. As John just mentioned, we have a pretty good handle. We have a good handle, an excellent handle, because we have a spreadsheet on what we've been ordering. We can give you our overtime costs, but I think you're talking as a whole total picture: cafeteria aides, new bus monitors, additional teachers that were hired. I think those are all appropriate questions, and I think that's why Scott is on here. Scott, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, the reality is that we went 2 or 3 weeks with no business manager at all, while Al Cameron had to take a leave to care for his family, and Paul Hendrickson's on the job for a week, as I said earlier. I'm confident that we're going to be able to get you those answers. It's just now we don't have them compiled, right? And we're not hiding anything. It's just a question of we don't have it all put together. And quite frankly, we haven't spent that much right yet. I think when you think about how these guys have opened the buildings, and they've spent $340,000, is pretty good. So we will get you guys that.
And I believe you guys are in good faith. I really do. It's just, it's got to be concerning that we don't have more specific information. You're saying they only spent X. I don't know where. I certainly haven't seen anything that says that. I would love to see that.
Okay.
I think that the good thing that I did hear in listening to the Finance Committee meeting tonight was that you're asking the right questions, and hopefully as Paul gets his feet more than just wet, we'll have a little better handle on it as we move into the next budget cycle as well. I think it's hard for us to get a handle on, what we would be able to spend next year if we don't know where we are for this year. And I think that was the same problem we had creating the budget for this current year. So we want to make sure that we're working with you to make that as smooth as possible.
Absolutely.
Do I see any other hands up? Any other questions as far as Board of Education COVID expenses? Do we have any more on the town side, Maria? Anything that we should be aware of?
I will say that we will be submitting to FEMA on a quarterly basis until the end of the year. So right now, September 30 is about to be finished. we'll have a submittal to go to the state again, the federal, by October 31st. And we'll be requesting information from the Board of Ed to submit with ours as well. Right now on the town side, we have about 90,000 spent to date.
Okay. And do we have projections on the town side as well, Maria?
I do not have them right now. We could probably work on that as well.
Okay, so maybe for our next meeting, if we can have just even a more broad discussion about what our projections are, you know, if we were to reopen schools at Thanksgiving, if we were to, you know, stay on hybrid, if we could have that, you know, the three kind of scenarios and our best guesstimate, maybe that would be helpful also. That goes along with our Parks and Rec department as far as, you know, what programs we might run. If we have to run programs, are they costing us more than we anticipated because of extra help, spreading kids out? There's some questions about field maintenance. So if we can start to tie those numbers together so we can put a framework as we're moving into the budget season, that would be great. Anybody have anything to add to that? Elaine? Okay. All right. So we'll move on to the year-to-date from the Munis report.
Thanks for inviting us in. We
Thank
appreciate
you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Scott.
We'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
All right, all. Thanks.
All right. Year-to-date report. Maria, you want to hit the highlights? Anybody have questions that anything they see they want to talk about?
The budget to actual for 2021 is, you know, it's early in the year, other than the large expense that I just talked about, which is on page 8, which is 90,000 for the COVID-related expenses. I don't see any, and possibly the trees, because they had to, because of this recent storm, they had more tree work to be done. And we're tracking all those expenses. Let me see. Oh, yeah, we're tracking we estimate about 300,000. I believe I submitted a report to you guys as well. There was grinding of trees and all kinds of other expenses. There was about 300,000 that we're estimating as of right now for that storm. And again, I'm not sure how much, if any, will be reimbursed from FEMA. They base it on the region. They have a threshold for the region. And if you reach that threshold, you could submit your request. But if you don't, the state doesn't get any, or the region doesn't get any reimbursement. So Megan Murphy is involved with that particular grant, and we'll give you more update as we know it.
Okay.
Any specific questions that anybody may have?
Marty? I saw you put the glasses on, Marty. I got concerned that it's usually here comes a good one.
No, I'm good right now. Thank you. I appreciate you sending us the revenue report. If there are any outliers there as well that you want to call out for us, that would be helpful.
It's too early. They're not straight line accounts, so I don't have anything to discuss right now on that.
And it looked like we were pretty much on target with our tax collection rate.
Yes, the tax collection rate was 98.6 as of August 31st, because for governments, we are allowing 2 months, 2 months of collections. It's a 60-day collection for July and August that is counted towards the fiscal year of June 30th.
Okay.
So those 2 months we received, I believe it was $1.4 million compared to last year of 470,000. So that's because payments were not due till July 1st. So that's why we have that increase.
Okay.
And also the fact that, you know, next payment is due October 1st, and I'm sure people were paying ahead of time, even though it was not due till October 1st.
Elaine?
Maria, I'm not sure I understood what you just said. We counting ahead? We told people that the money that would normally have been due by July 1st, which is not overdue till August 1st, they didn't have to pay to October. So you're saying in spite of that, we're still at a 98% collection rate?
Yeah, yeah. For GAAP purpose, we basically add the next 2 months, July and August, as collections, and we take away the July of August of the previous year. It just happened that this year, well, because they didn't pay the April payment until July 1st. That was an extra $1.3 million between July and August that we collected, compared to the year before, which was $470,000.
Okay, but I get what GAAP allows you to count or not count, and I really don't care a whole lot about that because it makes zero sense to me. But not being an accountant, maybe that's why. However, what I care about when I look at our fund
balance report?
When I look at, no, not so much the fund balance, but I look at the treasurer's report. And I see that he's saying our cash balance right now is 75 million. But a year ago, at this point in time, it was 90 million. So, you know, I'm roughly looking at a $15 million difference. And you're telling me we're still at a 98% collection rate. So I cannot make that jive. So from my standpoint, my concern is while we're telling everybody our collection rate's the same and we're fine, then why are we short $15 million?
Well, the collection rate is 98.6 for June 30th, 2020. This is going into August and September, which is the next fiscal year. Which
okay, so
we're
whole for the last fiscal year. Our concern is we're now working in this fiscal year. So what would we be at for this fiscal year?
I don't have those figures right now because the payment is not due till October 1st.
Okay. But the delay is costing us clearly revenue.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I do have one quick question. This is Marty Isaac. I thought in the previous conversation, previous meeting, there was a discussion that some of the money had been used for bonding potentially. I guess what I was hoping we'd see as a year-over-year report is kind of this pipeline of money to Elaine's point, so we can understand why is there a significant difference between last year's money at this point in time versus this year's money at this point in time, because there's a lot of different variables it could be. It could be the money was applied to projects. It could be that we're not getting the cash that we expected to get. But so it would be helpful if there was some sort of variance report to help us understand what the issue is, because it may all be perfectly fine. It may, you know, to Elaine's point, it could be a cash collection issue. It could be that the money was applied. It would just be helpful to see a pipeline to help us understand that.
Yes, I actually started to look at that. I noticed that there was a $15.4 million difference, and I started. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to analyze all the expenses. Could also be that I think there's some bond payments that were due this month, but they should have been also made last year at the same time. So I do have to look at it in detail. I haven't had a chance to do that, but I will try to do it for next month.
Can you send that out as some follow-up?
I will have to see if I can do it for next month.
Okay. Mark?
So Maria, well, last year, the July payment would have been due by August 1st, right?
Yeah.
So by the time you got to August 30th, that cash would have been in the bank.
Correct.
For the July 1st.
Right.
This year, the July 1st payment isn't due till October 1st.
Correct.
So by August 30th, people may not have paid that July 1st payment. And so I don't know if that explains the entire difference. I don't know what the tax revenue is on every payment.
Yeah.
But I presume that's a chunk of it.
Yeah, I'm sure that is. I did look at the collections last July and August compared to July and August and this year, and did not show me the disparity. So that's why I have to go look further. I did look at that. But you're right. It has to do with that because October 1st, they haven't paid the payment that was due July 1st. And so we're still waiting for next week. So maybe after next week, I can get a better indication where we are.
Did that answer your question?
No, I think it was just an observation as to one of the reasons why we might see a shortfall between year over year, because you have a big difference in tax payments. It was an observation and a potential reason,
Okay.
not a real question.
Anybody else? Maria, you want to talk about the fund balance? You sent it out today. Did everybody get that? Elaine, are you able to put that up on the screen?
Hang on, I think I can do that. Which one do you want? The 19 first?
Yeah, let's go 19 first, Maria.
Do the one for June 2020.
Okay, hang on. See if I can pull this together this time. I have it open. Is it showing?
No.
Hang on. I'm looking at it and it's showing me something. I wonder if I have to enable editing.
We did it before.
I know, and I'm looking at what I want, fund balance. Can we try this one again? Want this one?
I believe participants have been enabled to share.
Hang on.
Try it out. You want me to try to give it a go?
Yes, please.
All right, let's try this.
Hang on, it just said sharing's failed to start. The window you selected is invalid. Interesting.
Try it here. How's that?
Okay.
Is that the one?
That's it.
That's the one, Michael.
All right.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
That's September 30th.
No, no, that's something else.
That's the second one. They want the first one.
Okay.
Oh, I saw a chart and I got all excited.
You and my wife. All right, here we go. Try this one. Better?
Through June 30th, 2020.
Yeah.
That's it.
Y'all see it?
Good.
Yeah.
Make it a little bigger.
Just hit view normal. Oh, okay.
Or that.
Ooh, there you go.
Okay.
Okay. Maria, you want to walk us through?
Yeah, I can't see it all well. Okay. So basic fund balance, we start off at the 23,574,000. We had some supplementals for 979,973, which includes the ones we're requesting tonight, which is the 253,947. The revenue over budget was under budget was 1,162,000, and the expenditures under budget was 2,180,000, bringing the fund balance unaudited to 24,001,000, which is a 13.8% increase. 13.8 of the expenditures of 2020 expenditures. In the second sheet, you will actually see a list of all the supplementals, including the ones from tonight. And you'll also see the revenues and the shortfalls. And obviously the large shortfall in the revenue has to do with the taxes. We had the mall, which, withheld the 10%, which is 727,000. Monroe Turnpike, there was an adjustment due to the settlement of 329,000. And there were other small appeals totaling 126,000. So $1.2 million of the $1.5 million is that detail. Then on the other revenues, the surpluses for fees and permits. And I just looked at the large departments, town clerk, building, those are large departments that brought in some surpluses. But there were also some deficits, recreation, parks, and that had to do all with all the programming that didn't take place. Tuition from the schools, the transfer station. So that's approximately 276. And then the expense column sheet, yeah, you will see where the large expenses, the large surpluses. And we talked about the snow removal and the tree warden. You'll see the fleet maintenance vacancies. There were vacancies and also the fuel usage. So there's 149,000. To your point, Elaine, the salaries, like the fleet maintenance department did not fill a couple positions. So they had the surpluses. The PD salaries had 157,000 in surpluses because either they were not all filled and yeah, they were all not filled. Parks department, the same thing. 136,000 was both between salaries and professional other. The recreation is seasonal, 68,000, and recreation programs, 60,000. You know, these programs didn't take place because of COVID, so there was surpluses. Michael, I think if you go down, there's also, no, that's it. That's
Mark,
about $1.8 million of the surplus for the expenses side.
Yeah, Maria, just a question. So on the expenses, I see the contingency of 575. Does that include, I know we approved the transfer tonight, like, I don't know, 70,000 out of that contingency. Where does that show up somewhere in here?
Supplementals.
Well, it's part of the supplementals.
It's in the 253?
Yes, no, it's in the,
It should be in there. That was the one
I
we,
believe it's the 16, it's part of the 69,000. It wasn't a lot, and that's what, to Elaine's point, that why is it so much in the contingency? And as I mentioned before, is because salaries were under in that department, or we were able to transfer from other accounts to cover the contracts that were settled. And also in contingency, we budget a higher percent increase to settle with the contracts when in fact it came out lower. So there's also that surplus in there.
So is the offset to that 16, is the 69 somewhere else embedded in one of these other lines? I just don't see it.
I'm sorry,
You know,
can you ask that question?
Yeah. So the contingency at the end was not, the surplus wasn't 575. The surplus on contingency was 505, right?
Yeah, let me.
Because we used,
That's correct. That's correct.
so somewhere
That's
in this,
Yeah,
in this $1.7 million is a $70,000 offset.
correct.
Okay. Which I just don't, which I can't see because there must be salaries that are positive that are offsetting something else in here. I just can't see it.
Right. You're saying the 70,000 or the 505 that you're talking about, net?
Yeah, well, you've got in the 1795, you got 575,000 of contingency savings, right? But we did use 70,000 of the contingency, right?
Yeah.
So the whole 575 is not a state. It's not
That's
part
correct. That's correct.
So
This is prior
there's
to
an
the
expense.
transfer. Prior to the
Of
transfer.
yeah. So somewhere in here, okay. I guess.
Well, it's the item. I'll give you the item. It's an item we just approved.
Yeah, I know. I got it. I see it. 31,000 for.
Yes.
human services and technology salaries and social services salaries and other things.
So did I answer your question or you still have a question?
Yeah, I just don't see where, I see that we're saying we saved 575. I don't see where we spent the 70,000 in the total over under budget.
Yeah, I guess let me ask it a different way.
Okay, I hear your question.
Right, because you up above you say, hey, we saved 145
I
on
hear-
snow and I used 156 in tree. Here I'm saying I saved 575 in contingency, but I used 70 somewhere else. I just don't see where the 70 is. That's my question.
I hear your question.
I think it's under the supplemental appropriation that says 924 for $84,000. It's in the other tab. See it? Yeah, right there. Michael's got his cursor on it.
No, that's the workers' comp.
No, that's workers' comp.
It was 16.
It was 69,929. It was item 09-2003 tonight.
Well, the original, the original amount in the contingency was actually 601,000. We transferred 26. No.
No, Maria, in what you said, the balance after the transfer and the contingency was 505,000. So I'm with Mark. It seems to me that shouldn't be 575. It should be 505. So it's possible you just
I
have.
agree. This schedule is prior to the transfer.
Okay.
Okay, because some of them have the transfer in it, like the tree warden. So I was just confused as to where it is, but I think the savings is 505.
Yeah, I think we're overstating it. I agree with Mark. I think that number should have been 505, not 575. So we took account of the transfers that we did, but we didn't take, this number should have been, right, that's correct. Good catch, Mark.
Maybe I saved you an audit adjustment, Maria, when the
No,
audit.
we have to make this transfer. Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else?
Sorry, just let me ask this,
Go ahead.
because I think I've confused myself a little bit. This calculation of the general fund balance, how does it actually true up with when you look at that 98.5%, if it did come in, just for sake of argument, that it came in at 98% instead of 98.5%, how do you true up the general fund balance? Because it's not real time that you're reporting on this. So I'm not sure. I just got myself a little confused on that. So how does that true up?
Not sure I understand your question. As it true up to the 98.5?
No. The general fund balance calculation is based on a collection rate of 98.5% of the property tax. And
The fund balance is based on actuals.
it's actuals. Okay, it is actual. Okay, thank you.
Actuals.
Any other questions on the fund balance and where we are at the moment? Marty?
Well, if we're going to go through the 2020, I don't know if we need to because there's not a lot of line items there. The money that we budgeted for the Board of Ed that we were taking out of the fund balance, when does that move over out of the general fund? When does that get applied?
We didn't do anything for the Board of Ed.
Well, we voted to take money from the fund balance towards our operating budget.
To the Board of Ed? We
Not
did
directly to the Board of Ed.
Not
We
directly
did
to the Board
not.
of Ed, but to our overall budget.
Support the revenue side of the budget.
He's asking when that money comes out and gets applied.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I guess it just happens in real time. So my question was, we went through this process. We had, when we were only bringing in a certain amount of property tax, and we supplemented that with taking 2.9 million.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I'm just, when does that?
It doesn't happen until the end of the year if we need it.
It's $2,825,000.
It's that 2 million is like a cushion. If you need it at the end of the year that you did not use, you did not generate the revenue and you didn't have a reduction in expenses.
I
Then
see.
if you had like a shortfall.
I got it. Thank you.
Only problem with that, Maria, is if we go in the course of the year to make supplemental appropriations without that noted on our fund balance, we lose a little of our perspective. Yeah. So while it may not be taken out yet, I feel like there ought to be a footnote to remind us that it's really not the, whatever the number is, and it's not the 13 and a half.
Correct.
We're at 11.
Yeah, I'll make a notation.
That's a
on
very
that.
good idea. Very good idea.
Yeah.
Just so we
Next
all
thing.
keep it in the back of our minds, and, might not change if we have to do something, but we want to, I think it's a good reminder.
Agreed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll add it.
Any other questions? The last thing that we have to do tonight is just approval of the minutes from the August 13th meeting. They're attached at the end of your packet. I have a motion to accept them.
I will move their approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks, Elaine.
It's Elaine, yeah.
Yeah, you had enough time tonight, Michael. That's it. You're out.
Helping you along, Michael.
I need it.
All right. Does anybody see any problems with the minutes? Any corrections? If not, I'm going to do a roll call real quick. Paul Timpanelli,
Yes.
Michael Barker,
Yes.
Marty Isaac,
Yes.
Elaine Hammers,
Yes.
Mark Mascola,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also, so 6-0 minute, the motion to accept the minutes has passed. Any other business for this evening? Anybody have any comments? Anything else that we need, anything you'd like to see on the agenda for next month? Okay, hearing none.
Motion to adjourn.
By consent, everybody, good night.